There's that sinking feeling, right? The moment you realize your heat or your air conditioning has just died. But what if, instead of panic, you had a clear, confident plan ready to go? Well, in this explainer, that's exactly what we're going to do. Turn that worry into empowerment. It's the stuff of nightmares for any homeowner. The furnace just gives up the ghost in the middle of a blizzard, or the AC decides to quit during a brutal heat wave. Suddenly, your home's comfort is just gone, and you need help fast. And look, this isn't just an inconvenience. For a lot of people, it can be a real health and safety issue. And honestly, it's no wonder they fail sometimes. Your HVAC system is an absolute warrior, constantly fighting the elements. Just think about it. It's pushing back against that suffocating summer humidity that makes it feel over 100 degrees, or it's working overtime against freezing rain and howling winter winds. That constant battle really takes a toll. So first up, let's talk about that moment of breakdown. What happens when your comfort fails? You know, a system failure is rarely a complete mystery. It almost always comes down to a few common culprits. So let's put on our detective hats and identify these usual suspects. Technicians see the same things over and over again, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to be one of these 4 common failures. So let's break them down one by one. First, we have the sneaky one, the leak. Over the years, things like humidity can cause corrosion on the coils in your outdoor unit, creating tiny, little leaks in the refrigerant lines. At first, you might just notice it's not cooling as well, or you see ice building up, but here's the real danger. If you ignore that leak, it will eventually destroy the compressor, and that turns a simple repair into a catastrophically expensive replacement. Next up, the clog. Your AC is basically a giant dehumidifier, and all that water it pulls from the air has to drain out somewhere. But that little drain pipe is the perfect place for algae and mold to grow, especially in humid climates. When it gets clogged, the water backs up, and it can actually overflow, causing some serious damage to your ceilings and walls. Now here's one of the most common issues, and thankfully it's often a pretty simple fix: a failed capacitor. Think of it like a little battery that gives the motors a jolt to get started. When it goes bad, the motor tries to turn on, but just can't get that initial kick. That's why you often hear that frustrating humming sound. A pro can usually swap one of these out in just a few minutes. And finally, we have the most serious suspect of them all: a cracked heat exchanger in your gas furnace. After years and years of heating up and cooling down, the metal can literally crack. This is incredibly dangerous because it can let deadly, odorless carbon monoxide leak right into the air that's being blown through your home. This isn't just a breakdown, it's a critical safety emergency. Okay, so you know what might be wrong. But for an older system, this leads to a huge question. Is it even worth repairing? This is what we call the $5,000 decision. So you're facing a steep repair bill on a unit that's seen better days. You have to wonder, are you just throwing good money after bad? How do you make the right call for your wallet? Well, there's a really handy rule of thumb called the $5,000 rule. It's a super simple calculation to help guide you. Just take the age of your unit in years and multiply it by the estimated repair cost. If that number comes out to more than $5,000, it's a pretty strong sign that replacement is the smarter long-term move. So for example, if you have a 15-year-old system that needs a $400 repair, well, 15 times 400 is $6,000. That's well over the threshold. And here's the trade-off in a nutshell. A repair is going to cost you less upfront for sure, but you're still left with an old, inefficient system that could just break down again next year. A replacement, on the other hand, is a bigger investment today, but what you're buying is a brand new, super efficient system with a 15 to 20-year lifespan and lower energy bills every single month. It's all about a short-term patch versus long-term peace of mind. So, you've decided to call a professional. For a lot of homeowners, this is the most stressful part, that fear of the unknown. So let's just pull back the curtain and walk through exactly what a good service call should look like. This right here is the #1 sign of a trustworthy pro. There should never be any pressure or any surprises. A good technician will diagnose the problem and then hand you a clear written estimate that breaks down the parts and labor. You should know exactly what you're paying for before they even think about picking up a tool. The whole process should be totally transparent and follow these 3 simple steps. First, they do a thorough diagnosis to find the real root of the problem. Second, once you give them the okay on the estimate, they do the repair. And third, they do a final round of testing to make sure everything's running perfectly. And they'll probably even follow up in a few days, just to make sure you're still happy. Now that you know how to handle the service call, let's talk about how to avoid that emergency call altogether and what you can realistically expect to pay for this stuff. Look, not every failure is a financial disaster. Remember that failed capacitor we talked about? A really common fix like that might only run you about 300 bucks. It's so important to know that a lot of repairs are actually pretty manageable. But on the other end of the spectrum, you have the full replacement, which can easily be $6,000 or even more. That's the big, scary number everyone wants to avoid. So the real question is, how do you stay on the cheap side of this screen and avoid that massive bill on the right?
The answer is so simple: preventative maintenance. Seriously, think of an annual tune-up as a small investment to protect a very expensive machine. A technician can clean the coils, check all the levels, test the safety controls. Basically, they catch the small problems before they turn into those huge, catastrophic failures we just talked about.
So now you know. You know the common causes, you know how to make that big repair or replace decision, and you know what to expect from a pro. The only question left is, what's the one small step you can take this week to protect your system before the panic ever sets in? Maybe it's as simple as checking your filter or finally scheduling that tune-up you've been putting off.